Absolutely. And from your perspective, what are the differences between one of my clients working with an emerging brand with, say, less than 30 units already sold, as opposed to a mature brand of 70 or more units that they have
Sure.
placed?
Yeah, yeah, definitely there's big differences. So, I mean, the first is the availability of information, right? Emerging brands, smaller brands, depending on how soon they've emerged, right, or where they're at in the process, we may have very, very little information in the FDD, and that's a bit of a handicap, right? It's not necessarily a deal breaker, but we have to caution our clients, say, look, this is emerging. There's the downside is that they may not be fully developed. Their system may not be proven in markets that you're interested in. Now, the upside to an emerging brand is they're probably more flexible on the agreement, right? We probably have a little bit more leverage in negotiating certain things to make sure that this would be the right fit in your market. So there's some give and take there with emerging brands, but the biggest hurdle is definitely information. Is we can't get insight into where they're operating, right? The how their units have fared over time and in certain locations and what competitors are doing, things like that. There's just a gap because it's so early. Um, Now, on the flip side, the established brands, you can usually get a lot of good information, right? You know, they're established. Frankly, if they've got more than 70 units, they're probably well developed and they have a team that is dedicated to franchise development and franchise improvement, meaning not just sales, but also making sure that the units are operating optimally, right?
Right.
Running the right way and doing the right things, which is very important, very, very important, not just for you, but for the whole system, right? Because once a couple of units get a bad reputation, that spreads, especially with the day of the internet. It's like wildfire, right? Stuff goes viral and it can crush you. Um, so yeah, so you can get more data with established brands. That's the upside. Definitely with established brands and units and things like that, you can talk to more existing franchisees and see what their journey is. The downside, obviously, is they're much less likely to make any changes to the franchise agreement or any substantial changes. Now, even with emerging, or excuse me, even with established brands, sometimes we can modify the timeline, right? Opening timeline, if maybe you're coming from corporate, you want to take a sabbatical or something, maybe we can extend that opening timeline, or um, work out a training if you feel like you don't need to send so many people to training or something. Maybe you can become a qualified trainer for your own staff or whatever, depending on the system, depending on specific little things like that. It's not cutting to the franchisor's rights, right, or the fundamental elements of the franchise system, but it's a few things that will make it easier for, right, the client, for the prospective client, and hopefully will help just get them in the black sooner, right? That's the goal. You want to make sure they're successful. Um, so yeah, I mean, that's kind of in a nutshell the differences in the way that we kind of approach emerging versus established.